You don't care what you're doing to me. I've been down in the ruins so deep. All the games that you played, all the love you forsaken, you let it slip away. You don't care what you're doing to me. Every setback, every mishap, every time you say you gon' change. Say you get it, you regret it, I forgive it, but you stay the same. You should cry an ocean for me, for the dumb shit and the damage you've done. Cause I've been crying oceans for weeks. Tried to fight it, but I'm drowning alone. Sister, save me now. Save me now. Whoa. Sister, save me now. Save me now. Whoa. Shed a tear for me, baby, if you dare. Maybe then it would show me that you care. Cause your words never match what you do, how you act, so I can't just take you back. Never fool me once, never fool me twice. If you love me, you'll react. You should cry an ocean for me, for the dumb shit and the damage you've done. Cause I've been crying oceans for weeks. Tried to fight it, but I'm drowning alone. Sister, save me now. Save me now. Whoa. Sister, save me now. Save me now. Whoa. Every setback, every mishap, every time you say you gon' change. Say you get it, you regret it, I forgive it, but you stay the same. You should cry an ocean for me, for the dumb shit and the damage you've done. Cause I've been crying oceans for weeks. Tried to fight it, but I'm drowning alone. Sister, save me now. Save me now. Whoa. Sister, save me now. Save me now. Whoa.
So you're asking me, Mama Cass, what the heck is Wetiko Culture? The short answer, to paraphrase a dish soap commercial from my youth, is you're living in it. We all are. We are living in Wetiko Culture. There are other names which have been used. Radical feminists call it the patriarchy. Deep ecologists call it civilization. Many First Nations people call it settler culture or invader culture. It has been called the rat race, living in the machine, suburbia, industrialized capitalism, progress, modern life, the American dream. To name its effects on us, or the mechanism by which it maintains itself, we can use a term that Dee Graham coined in her book Loving to Survive, societal Stockholm Syndrome. Essentially, we are all trapped in a relationship with a domestic abuser, and that abuser is the very culture that we live in. We are being held prisoner, and we have identified with our captor. This is the coping strategy. If we just capitulate, we will survive. The great technological philosopher Louis Mumford used a phrase to describe this unwritten contract by which we are all held as captives within the system that exploits us. He called it the Magnificent Pyramid. The form of the capitulation which is required may change somewhat in detail as the details of the systems change, but it is always a bribe. We take a bribe of a good life in exchange for wholly giving up the possibility of living in any other way. We all grew up hearing these messages. Work hard, stay in school, get the good job, do what you're told and be what you're told. If you work hard enough and fast enough and excel enough, then you will get the nice house. You will get the fancy car, the best person who loves you. You'll have the coolest clothes. You will look so good. Everyone will like you. You'll have everything you ever wanted and you will be happy, happy, happy. You can live in comfort, but you must live this way with all costs in order to get what you perceive as the benefit. Although you're probably not even perceiving that this is a deal that you are making. It's always been that way. We're all frogs slowly being boiled alive. Like living in an abusive relationship, we know that we're not happy, but it can be hard to put your finger on what is wrong. You've most likely been convinced that it is you that is wrong. We all know that those people who can't cut it, that aren't good enough, that don't make the grade, end up cast outside. It's their own fault. We all know this. If you're a loser, you deserve to lose. If you're poor or sick or injured or homeless, then it's because you're inferior, right? They're all just people that are losers, right? If I work hard enough and fast enough and good enough, I won't be there. It can't ever happen to me. And besides, everything is always getting better. Just hang in there. Don't rock the boat. Progress will save us all. Just keep working harder. You'll get ahead. Always the promise of something better. Just ahead. Always progress. This is much like the future fake method of manipulation that a narcissist uses to convince their victim, their dupe, their target, their supply, to remain within their thrall. It will get better. Just hang in there. Give more. Always. You must give more. Just give a little bit more. The name that First Nations people of Turtle Island give to a narcissist is Wetiko, a cannibal that consumes human spirits to live, a hungry ghost that always takes and gives nothing but promises, threats, and lies, an abuser who sucks the life out of the victim who they trap. And we are living in a culture that is itself a full-blown narcissist, trapping us with promises, threats, and lies, dangling a magnificent bribe to force us to stay and give more, and yet more, and ever more. In addition to being a narcissist, this culture also creates, facilitates, and rewards individual narcissists, popular leaders strutting across the world stage, leading us all with promises, threats, and lies. I'm certain that any of us could easily name a half a dozen of these. You all know famous examples. You also probably know examples in your own lives from the smaller stage of your own life. They are everywhere. And there are always more, and yet ever more of them. And so this is why I call our culture, our worldwide civilization, our way of life, Wetiko Culture. Welcome to Wetiko Culture. Welcome to our nightmare. You've always been here, but you never knew that it is what it is. And we are just not allowed to talk about it. The same way that when we grow up in an abusive family system, we know we are not supposed to talk about it. Let me give you an example. My mom was a very heavy smoker. And when my parents split up, she then married another very heavy smoker. My kids would cough, and my nose was always running. My mom found my constant sniffling to be very annoying, but if we ever tried to open a window, even when we were trapped in a car with 2 chain-smoking adults, we were yelled at and told to shut it because we were letting the heat or the air conditioning out. But I'm not a child anymore. I understand what happened there. My mom had a background of massive abuse within her family, on top of a history of trauma from outside the family, on top of generations of abuse and trauma. None of it ever named or explained. She did the best she could to simply survive, and her addictions were central to her being able to survive. Exposing faults and weaknesses is painful, and to do so outside of a healing process is frankly simply pointless. Mom was defending herself from her own awareness of her own weakness. I didn't understand any of this back then. And I was a child and a girl and powerless. So I couldn't change anything. I understand now. I want you to understand too. Then we can begin to change things. We can start to return to health, turn or return to healthy ways, and turn or return to healthy ways of life. We can return to matriarchal ways of life. We can ReMatriate.
Storms, they come, they go. They know to ride the breeze. Life is not always still. Find your way back. Let it flow. Guide where to go. Let it flow. Guide where to go.
We are living in Wetiko culture. We are living in a culture that is both itself insane and that survives by driving each and every single one of us within its power and control absolutely batcrap insane. But the thought form doesn't begin with insanity. The term narcissistic personality disorder refers to the most common form of what can be called Wetiko. And NPD is not insanity. As it progresses, though, As the connection between the consciousness thus afflicted and actual reality is broken down, as self-justification proceeds inevitably into delusion, insanity results. And if those of us who are the victims of these people do not escape from them, eventually we will become insane as well. So, how do we escape? In order to escape a trap, you must first be able to understand the trap. I have lived this in my own personal life, but I wouldn't say that I escaped, because in so many ways, I had to chew off my own leg in order to get out. Or, to be more precise, it was the trap that cut the leg off. I could never have surrendered my children. They were forcibly severed from me. But it was the process of healing, at least healing enough so that I could carry on living. It was all about understanding what had happened and understanding that this was not just me. It was only by developing the ability to see that this is Wetiko culture that I came to understand how Father Demon had managed to take my children. He had succeeded because the system had supported him in so many ways. But I couldn't understand why everyone would have supported him in these ways. All I knew was that I had failed in the only duty in my life that had any meaning. I was deeply ashamed that I could not protect my children, could not keep them with me, could not keep them safe. And, as I always do when confronted with pain and with shame, I turned to study. And my mother goddess sent me a gift in the form of a book. This book. Let me explain how she sent me the book and why it was a gift. As the first step to taking my children from me, Father Demon convinced the court system to force me to let him take my children for visits. First, it was overnight visits, and just the older children, but then over a fairly short period of time, the visits grew longer, and then the younger children were added as well. The last time that I would ever see them was when I put them into the minivan belonging to Father Demon's girlfriend on the 4th day of July, 2013. This visit was supposed to last 10 days. I said goodbye to them, and then Raven, which is the nickname that I use here for my eldest daughter, Raven and I got on a train to go to a radical feminist conference. Although I didn't know it at the time, this was the last time that I would see my babies, my 4 youngest cubs. I had decided, since I had to let Father Demon take my kids, that Raven and I would at least get to go to this conference, because Raven didn't have to watch the 4 younger children for me. We could then both go together. I was trying to make the best of a very bad situation. We had an amazing time, and we both learned so much. We met the most wonderful women. When we got home, though, the intensity of my fight for my children was taken to a whole nother level because Father Demon refused to bring them back. And my lawyer didn't seem to think that this was a big deal. And the biggest problem, though I didn't know this at the time, the Child Protective Agency lawyer, who knew all about Father Demon from experience and who had been protecting me and my children from him for many years without me even knowing about it, he had retired and he had been replaced. And now there was a brand new lawyer who had no knowledge of Father Demon and of the way that he had been trying to use this agency as a weapon against me for years. A young woman with almost no life experience and certainly no experience or training in how to identify abusers and in how they function. The new lawyer, well, she had fallen hook, line, and sinker for the story bait that Father Demon dangled in front of her. She believed him She believed all of his lies without questioning them. She was supporting him and keeping my children forever. And the family court refused to uphold the law because this agency said that all of Father Demon's lies about me were true. So, those who have experienced and have knowledge about this topic will know what I mean when I tell you what the tactic that Father Demon used here was. It's called a smear campaign. It was part of his larger strategy to avoid being put in prison for what he did to Raven when she was a child, when she was his child, when she was his stepchild. You who know will recognize the term DARVO. D-A-R-V-O. DARVO stands for deny, accuse, and reverse the victim and offender. It is a very common way that sexual predators of children are able to escape accountability. And Father Demon used it very successfully against Raven and against me. Because the fact that I believed Raven and that I had tried to keep her and her younger sisters and brothers safe was proof that it was me that was the crazy one, the dangerous one. Seriously, that is what these people actually believe. Let me give you an example. I once had a completely unhinged social worker actually scream right into my face that never happened, because if it had happened, he would be in jail, so it did not happen. I was a little shocked, and I realized I was completely screwed. Everything that I did or said to try and tell them that I was not the problem was used as proof of my dangerous insanity. And right in the full horror of this realization that the court was not going to help me, but rather would totally support Father Demon in gleefully holding my children hostage forever, right when my breast milk was drying up after being separated from my nursing babies for 6 weeks, right when I was completely overwhelmed and confused and terrified and unable to understand or to cope. This book arrived in the mail. An amazing woman who I met at the conference knew that I really wanted to read it, and she sent it as a gift. It was addressed both to me and to Raven in a note. And it was an immense gift. I knew she knew I wanted to read it, but I don't think she knew what it would mean, because it's a gift that saved my life. Now, because I had been studying radical feminism for a few years, and reading many articles and many books and many blogs, I had been learning more about patriarchy. This book, though, it took it to a whole other level, and it introduced me to the work of Derek Jensen. Now, I was already familiar with Lierre Keith, another one of the co-authors of this book. She was one of the speakers at that conference. Lierre gives an amazing presentation that breaks down the process used by patriarchy to take over the whole world through the process of agriculture. When I first saw it online a little while before this conference, it confused me and it shocked me. How could agriculture possibly be bad? Keep in mind, all I ever wanted as a child was to live on a nice farm in the country. So how could farms and farmers be bad? Surely not. No way. But I watched all 6 videos in the series, and I was confronted with centuries of evidence and with undeniable logic. I still didn't want it to be true, so I watched it again and again, and I shared it with Raven, and we talked about it and watched it again and again. We had to keep watching it because it was such a shock to the system. After we assimilated that, we watched other pieces or read other pieces of Lierre's work. Like a wonderful article where she describes perfectly the difference between liberal and radical critical analysis. And then her wonderful book, The Vegetarian Myth, where she describes her 20-year journey through trying and failing to make a vegan diet and lifestyle into the salvation that it is advertised to be. And in all of her work, I was confronted with logic that was undeniable. Logic that destroyed so many of the assumptions that I had been raised to believe and to never question. But logic that explained so many of the experiences of my life. This logic explains my suffering and puts it all into perspective. It helped me to understand that I really wasn't special. I was just like so many other women who had suffered these same things over and over and over and over and over and over again for centuries, for thousands of years. Now, it had been partly to see Lierre give that very presentation about agriculture that Raven and I had wanted to go to the Radical Feminist Conference in the first place. I knew that Lierre gave that presentation for the group Deep Green Resistance, so I was familiar with the group, and that was why I wanted to read the book. And it was because of this that I was somewhat familiar with Derek Jensen, but I'd never read any of his work. I'd never actually immersed myself in it. When I finally got to read the book, read Deep Green Resistance, then my mind really started to explode, and I questioned yet more and more and more of my previously unquestioned assumptions. I was really hungry for more of this difficult knowledge. I combed YouTube for every single piece of video of Derek giving a talk. I watched the endgame presentations over and over and over. It's a theme here. Till I almost had them memorized. And this was hard for me. I have a university degree in human geography, which is a discipline that studies cities. I mean, among other things, to be sure, but it definitely does study cities. So to admit to myself that cities are completely unsustainable, ontologically, they cannot be reformed or done in any different way that means that they aren't destructive and founded in and maintained through violence. It's hard to accept. It was difficult knowledge. But I kept going. I kept looking for more. It hurt. It was painful, but I knew it was true. So I kept looking for more from Derek Jensen. I started seeing him included with others in larger projects, and not just his own work, like the documentary film, What a Way to Go, Life at the End of Empire. Derek is one of many experts that are interviewed in this documentary. It popped up in my YouTube feed, and so I watched it. All 2 hours of it. Over and over and over. Again, the theme. It takes me a little while. I can't get it all at once. And I do that constantly. Even at night. When I couldn't sleep because I knew that my children were suffering and that I couldn't save them, I would put these on to listen to, and I would drown the thoughts out of my mind with one of these films or podcasts. I fell asleep with them playing, and if I woke up with a nightmare, which was most nights, I just replayed it again until I passed out again. This was a central part of my suite of coping strategies while dealing with my life being completely destroyed all around me. When I'm overwhelmed, I study compulsively, and deep ecology was what I was now studying, along with the radical feminism that had led me to it. I also went to see Professor Heidelgudner Abendroth give a series of lectures just a few months after my children were taken. I had been studying her work for several years, And now I got to see her in person and learn even more. Now, her discipline, modern matriarchal studies, is sort of like the love child of radical feminism and cultural anthropology. Cultural anthropology is also very similar to human geography, which I studied in university. Now, deep ecology is sort of like the love child of environmental biology or ecology and animist spirituality, paganism, immanent theology, which is my own faith of mother goddess worship. So I was going down these two avenues at the same time, contrasting the study of matriarchal cultures with our own Wetiko culture. I kept studying all of these things as time went on, and as my life was systematically destroyed ever more and more. As I said, it wasn't my only coping strategy by any means, but it was actually a healthy one. Not all of them were. So, I'm studying away, desperately trying to make sense of what is happening to me over a period of several years. And as we all know, the algorithm used by these various sites suggests material that they suspect is related to your interests. Much of it is really not at all related, but then occasionally you get something that is really good. Basically, you hit the jackpot. And I hit the jackpot. That's what I got when I got an article that was titled Seeing Wetiko on Capitalism, Mind Viruses, and Antidotes for a World in Transition. The article was in the economics section of Cosmos, Journal for Global Transformation. I noticed this, and I wondered a little bit about it. Now, you might think that economics is not a related area or something that I would be drawn to. You would be wrong. Much of the discipline of modern matriarchal studies is actually a study of an alternative economic cosmology that these scholars call the gift economy. It is foundational to the cosmology underlying matriarchal cultures. I had already been drawn to this because I had developed an interest in feminist economics back when I was in university in the mid to late 1990s. I had seen a wonderful documentary that was called Who's Counting? Marilyn Waring on Sex, Lies, and Global Economics. This was about a New Zealand politician and her own personal journey, where she traveled across the globe right to New York City to understand how conventional economics maintains hegemony, maintains the balance of power, the status quo. I have been fascinated by the study of political economy ever since that time. So my interest was really piqued, and I read the article. The article mentioned names that I had only just heard recently for the first time, like Daniel Quinn, who is one of those who are interviewed in the documentary What a Way to Go. I kept reading. I was getting more excited, and I was seeing that it talked about the work of Carl Jung, the great psychologist, who I had been studying since my teenage years. It quoted people of the First Nations of Turtle Island, and then it mentioned the work of someone brand new to me who I had never heard of, Paul Levy. Levy was expanding upon the work of a First Nations activist and philosopher named Jack Forbes. Forbes's masterwork is his amazing and absolutely foundational book, Columbus and Other Cannibals. In this book, Forbes began popularizing the use of the term Wetiko to describe the spiritual sickness underlying the consumption of human lives and cultures. And guess who wrote the introduction to that Jack Forbes book? Eric Jensen. There is so much going on here, so many overlaps and everything weaving together. My brain was just lighting up with new connections and seeing interwoven patterns everywhere. It was an incredibly exciting moment. Now, since the more than 10 years since I first read this book, Deep Green Resistance, first Lierre, who I had met in person at that conference, and then through Lierre, Derek as well, have both become my Facebook friends. And I have also become a member of the group named after the book, Deep Green Resistance. And although I've not been able to meet him in person, Derek has been very supportive to me, and he has also been very influential to me because of his large body of excellent and exhaustively researched work. I have kept digging into it, and I have been able to read some of his books now. And he has also actively suggested other material to study, both on his Facebook page and in some of his past works that I've been studying. Derek is the one who introduced me to the work of Lewis Mumford, the technological philosopher who came up with the concept of the magnificent bribe. Mumford also described something which he called authoritarian techniques, which is the suite of social systems underlying the creation, use, and maintenance of a particular technology. Mumford taught that authoritarian techniques both give rise to authoritarian social structures and also trap us into those structures. Techniques that seduce us with promises and trap us with threats and lies. Authoritarian techniques are a vector of Wetiko. Wetiko seduces us with promises and traps us with threats and with lies in much the same way that a narcissist traps you into a relationship, seduces you with promises, traps you with threats and with lies. Fractal-like pattern repetition across so many scales. Every time that I found these ideas all weaving together in new ways, it was yet another experience of ecstatic revelation. And that is what was happening while I was reading the Cosmos article. In that Cosmos article, I read about the concept that Jack Forbes had introduced to us. I read about what Wetiko is, that it is a mind virus, a thought form spread from one person to another as we are each either consumed or infected and then bent on consuming others. We are either destroyed or we are become destruction. This is a quote from Forbes that was used in that Cosmos article. Brutality knows no boundaries. Greed knows no limits. Perversion knows no borders. These characteristics all push towards an extreme, all moving forward once the initial infection sets in. This is the disease of the consuming of other creatures' lives and possessions. I call it cannibalism. Jack Forbes, Columbus and Other Cannibals. Things were really starting to crystallize for me as I read this. Again, I was hungry for more. I have been searching for and finding more and more about this concept of Wetiko and about the fact that our culture is itself a full-blown Wetiko ever since. The ramifications of the fact that this culture is undeniably a full-blown Wetiko are immense and utterly paradigm-crushing. Let me give you another quote, this time taken from fiction, but fiction can teach through allegory, so there can be much wisdom in stories. Atrocity is recognized as such by victim and perpetrator alike, by all who learn about it at whatever remove. Atrocity has no excuses, no mitigating argument. Atrocity never balances or rectifies the past. Atrocity merely arms the future for more atrocity. It is self-perpetuating upon itself, a barbarous form of incest. Whoever commits atrocity also commits those future atrocities thus spread. The Apocrypha of Maudib, Frank Herbert, Dune. So, the brutality, the greed, the perversion that Jack Forbes is describing and calling cannibalism, calling Wetiko, leads to the commitment of atrocity by those who are infected with the mind virus. And as Frank Herbert points out and describes so brilliantly in his Dune series, atrocity breeds further atrocity. You can never balance out atrocity by committing further atrocities. This is being displayed on the world stage right now at the time that I make this film. Most poignantly, perhaps, in the lands of the Middle East. There are atrocities being flung back and forth, and all that happens is that the frequency and intensity of atrocity increases, like a monstrous form of moral climate change. So, we can see that all of these instances of overlapping and of self-perpetuating atrocity, and even those instances of attempting to avoid atrocity, to avoid suffering, because the only way to be truly safe is to be so strong, so powerful, that no atrocity can ever be perpetrated upon you. All these instances, for generations upon generations, have led us to simply intensify our practice of Wetiko. Always we must be bent on domination. Always we must become more powerful, and we exercise brutality, greed, and the perversion of everything in order to dominate and to grow in our power. Can it ever end? Can it ever be fixed? Can we make progress to something better? Something safer? Something kinder? Can there be reform? These are questions that those of us who have glimpsed parts of this interwoven problem have been asking for a very long time. I had started to see part of the answers to these questions over 15 years ago when I was first studying radical feminism. When Flower Cub, my youngest daughter, was baby, I joined what was then a very small online community of radical feminists from around the world. Now, there were a few blogs around where women talked about radical feminism, and there were some groups on Facebook, secret, private, hidden groups, very hard to find. When I was in university in the mid-1990s, radical feminism was already being pushed out of academia, and my professors in women's studies were far too scared to talk very much about it at all. The consequences were too horrific, so they kept their mouth shut. Since that time, though, radical feminism has been forced even further underground, and the discipline of women's studies, it has now effectively been erased. It's not even taught at the university that I went to. But in 2008, when Flower was born, radical feminism could be found in a few small corners of the internet where women could gather in secret and discuss these things. Scans of books in PDF format were shared freely, and so in this way we could actually get our hands on and read the books that scholars like Mary Daly, Janice Raymond, Sonia Johnson, Sheila Jeffries, and Andrea Dworkin had written. Most of these were out of print and impossible to find otherwise. But because I was able to read these books and discuss these things with a small group of truly amazing women, I can now share some of the answers to these questions with you. But this film is already getting very long. When I first started writing it, well over a year ago, I assumed that I could explain everything about Wetiko culture in just one film. I've kept writing, always fleshing things out, trying to explain things even better, and it has been getting longer and longer and longer. So I started to break it up into chapters so that it wouldn't be a really long stretch of just me talking to you, and I kept writing. I now realize it will have to be a series. So I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to tell you that this is the end of part 1 of my first series. Explaining Wetiko culture. Part 2 will be about critical analysis of the hierarchical structure of patriarchy. And we know that patriarchy is Wetiko culture. We must study the structure of patriarchy, of Wetiko culture, in order to understand how it works and why it is so hard to end it. So, please come back soon. We must understand Wetiko culture to learn how to escape it. And we must escape from Wetiko culture before we can complete our mission here on ReMatriate. Our mission as radical homemakers is to make ourselves a home. Thank you so much for watching. Please like this video so that others will see it and can benefit. Just like the algorithm fed me new material years ago, I would like others to see my work. Please subscribe so that you will know as soon as the next part of this series comes out, and also as soon as I add any other new material, because I'm working on other things too. And more subscribers really helps with the algorithm. So everyone who subscribes, thank you. I am working very hard to get as much new material out as quickly as possible, despite the chaos and the trouble in my life, as I try to save my children and make ourselves a home. There is also a big development occurring right now that will be live by the time that I post this on YouTube. Because I'm going through financial hardship right now, due to me being off work for several months for a hand surgery, and because my eldest son, ManCub, who shares this apartment with me, has been struggling to keep a job due to his own disability, I had to start a fundraising campaign to save us from being evicted. There has been a wonderful, generous response, and I'm so thankful. As a way to give back, and because I have the time off work right now, ManCub and I are starting a Discord server for Radical Homemakers. I will be inviting everyone who has already made a donation, and anyone who makes another donation of any size gets to join this Discord community. If you wish to join the Discord community, you can email me, and I'll let you know how to go about doing that. My email is in the description below. I'm also available through my Facebook page, which is public, and I will list it below as well. So, as I said, this is for a donation of any size at all. I'm not going to put a price structure on it because you yourselves know what you can and you can't afford, and I don't want anyone to feel any kind of pressure at all. Helping to support me at all in being able to do my work is an immense gift, regardless of the size and the amount that you are able to contribute. If you're curious and you would like more details about what exactly is going on with ManCub and myself and how we got into this really rough patch, I have made a video about it, and I will link it in the description. At some point, I will teach myself how to do links in the video itself, and you might see that too, but I won't promise it yet because I don't want to delay posting. I've had to teach myself everything from scratch in my spare time, and sometimes I learn kind of slowly. So I am working really hard at this while I'm also taking care of myself and finding peace wherever and whenever I can. It is my fervent wish that each of you radical homemakers will also find as much peace as you can whenever and wherever you can. Please always remember that I love you.
I've been lying here for too long. I don't know what else to do. wanna get away from every little thing just to try to make it through. I've been thinking about my options, every detail in my head, but it doesn't really matter, nothing matters, so I cry instead. I've been running in circles, trying to catch my breath. I've been trying everything I can, but I ain't got nothing left. I've been staring at the ceiling, I've been staying up all night. Everything I ever worked for vanished in the blink of an eye. I've been asking every question, 'cause I haven't got a clue. Why's it gotta be me? What the hell am I supposed to do? I've been running in circles, trying to catch my breath. I've been trying everything I can, but I ain't got nothing left. And I know there's so much more to this life, but it's hard to see it clearly. Yeah, I tried my